All right. There is more to come. And many of those guys showed up this weekend, whether they were already committed to Texas or not. So you've got the full list for us.
Yes, I do. So we'll start out with the three guys that are currently committed to Texas. We have Lance Jackson at defensive line. A picture of him came out, by the way. He makes Steve Sarkisian look like a 5-year-old. It just amazes me what genetics looks like on someone like that. That's just an absolute freak. He's 6'5", 245 pounds. I think he's bigger than that. I think he's probably 260 at this point. He's a 4-star defensive lineman, the number 10 defensive lineman in the 2025 class. He is the brother of Landon Jackson from Arkansas, that once renowned 5-star highly rated recruit. And he actually chose Texas over Arkansas and a couple others. This is a guy that I'd be shocked if he's not a 5-star by the time he ends up on campus, because that's what a 5-star looks like, at least in my opinion. And the next up, this is the guy that I talked about where if you, Sark wants you, when you're committed, to stay committed, like going through the conversation of, listen, if you want to go take other visits, that's fine, but just don't commit. Brandon Brown has just said, no, I'm gonna take other visits. He is the softest of softest commits. He's actually came in this town, enjoyed his time. I think it's going to come down to probably LSU and our old buddy Bo Davis over there in Texas. I think if Bo Davis was at Texas, I think Brandon Brown would be a hard commit. I don't think he'd be taking any more visits. He's actually, another thing Texas fans don't hear, he was going to go to Miami next weekend. That is nixed. He's not going there. He's going to Oklahoma now. So even worse when you're visiting. He's going to Oklahoma. But this is a guy, again, Mark, this is a 3-star kid. And the only reason he's a 3-star is because he's 6'1". That's legitimately the only reason this guy's a 3-star at the defensive tackle position. If you look at the offers, LSU, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, and Miami, no, this guy's a really good player. He has the body type other than the 6'1", which everyone made a big fuss about that with Byron Murphy too. I don't know. Byron Murphy was a top 20 pick in the NFL draft and was pretty damn good at Texas. So I don't think height really matters when it comes to this. It's all about pad leverage and weight. I really want to keep this guy. But if you're going to put a gun to my head, I think he ends up at LSU. I think he goes where Bo Davis is. I think he really likes Bo Davis. And I think he ends up there, unfortunately. If he does end up at Texas, that'd be awesome. But I do think it's between LSU and Texas. Next up, Ricky Stewart, hard commit. Him and Lance Jackson are completely bought in. They're not going to change. They've only taken visits in Texas since they committed. He is a 3-star, number 35 running back in the country. And they're basically, Lance Jackson and himself are going on campus recruiting other kids. That's what they're doing. They're showing up every couple weeks and recruiting other kids to come to the University of Texas. So no worry from those two. Brandon Brown, again, could flip. So those are the three currently committed to Texas. Now, we'll jump into the guys that aren't committed to Texas and have wide open recruitments. I think you'll see 2 or 3 of these guys commit probably in the next month, and I'll hand it the ones I think that will be. And this could possibly be one. Marco Jones. I know John will not like to hear this. It's between Texas and Michigan, most likely for the linebacker, 4-star player, number 14 edge, according to 247. He is from California, but most likely he will be playing at Texas or at Michigan. I think Notre Dame is also in the peripheral there, but I really think it's going to be Texas or Michigan. Texas has basically pitched him on the idea of playing outside linebacker, edge, basically whatever linebacker position they need him to play on a down-to-down basis. So they like the versatility there, and he also likes to hear that, because which player at a high level wouldn't want to be on the field as much as they possibly could or can? And I think it ends up with Texas or Michigan. I don't know where it's going to go, but those are the 2 players right now, and we'll see what happens in the next coming probably month. He'll decide. And then Smith Aragbo, that his name is very hard to pronounce, but there's a feeling that he is committed to Texas Tech. Again, number 22 defensive lineman in the 247 class, 4-star from Texas. And I think there's a 70% chance he ends up at Texas Tech. The other 30% chance I would put at Texas. I think there's a really good chance he does end up at Texas. I think he likes Texas. What isn't good, though, his parents did not show up on their recruiting visit. And to me, when your parents aren't showing up at one place, but when you go to Texas Tech, they do show up. I think it's kind of hard there to overcome that type of thing. But they are big on academics. In the couple schools that I'll list here in Texas Tech, Washington, Texas, and Oklahoma, those are the 4 big schools he'll end up at. He is gigantic. He loves academics. That's number one thing. I guess when you talk to his parents, if you bring up football first, they kind of get angry. They want to talk about academics. So out of those 4 schools, Texas is the best institution for academics. I'm not trying to be mean there, but that's just the case. So if that really is a swing point, you're going to end up at Texas. But the no parents not showing up on what potentially is your one visit to Texas, that's really hard for me to believe. So I think he ends up at Texas Tech, but it could happen. Ty Anthony Smith, a good case. He is at Texas now. He went to Texas A&M on his visits last year, never visited Texas. National Signing Day, he signed with Texas. So that doesn't always mean you end up at that place. So he could possibly end up at Texas. Who knows? Now, here's the big fish. Everyone wants to know. DeCorian Moore visited this weekend. He was hooked onto Steve Sarkisian the whole visit. Wherever he needed to go, Steve Sarkisian was in the car with him, driving him around on campus. The picture that's floating around online, 11 family members on the visit with him to Texas in the big visit. And it's just crazy. His mom's from Austin. I think his family 100%. There was only one person in that photo that didn't look like he wanted him to go to Texas. His little cousin is holding L for LSU down in the picture. Everyone else is hook 'em horns, smiling. So I think mostly everyone in his family wants him to end up at Texas. He's a Texas kid from Duncanville, the number one wide receiver in the class. He also, this is a very smart and beyond his years move. He requested Ryan Wingo for his visit. Like, that's the guy who showed him around. And Ryan Wingo is the guy that just came in. He chose Texas over Missouri in last year's class. So, and he was the number 7 wide receiver. So I think that was really smart for him. He wants to pick his brain, get to know what it's like here. Everything that I've heard, Mark, like 90% chance he ends up at Texas. It'd be shocking. It'd be more shocking, I heard today, if he didn't end up at Texas in the next 10 days to 2 weeks than if he didn't end up at Texas at all. So I think there's a really good chance he's going to end up at Texas. If he doesn't, I think Ohio State is probably number 2, but they're down the road at number 2. I don't even think there's anyone in the same ballpark as Texas at this point. Like Oregon, he's going to visit. I don't think happens. LSU, he visited again. Not going to happen. Ohio State's out there, but I think they're in the rear view mirror about 2 miles back. They're specking your rear view mirror. So I think it's Texas at this point. Another picture. Nick Brooks coming in from the airport from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, 6'7", 350 pounds. Kyle Flood has a type, and it's big humans. He said that. I want big humans. You give me a big human, and I'll mold him into a good offensive lineman. And Nick Brooks exemplifies that. That's exactly who this is. 6'7". That's just insane. If you look at most tackles, like good ones in the NFL at least, they're usually 6'5", maybe 6'6". 6'7's kind of pushing it, honestly. He might be too big, but he is the number 15 offensive tackle. He absolutely loved his visit. He's down to Georgia, USC, of course, Iowa, and Texas. I think if I had to rank Texas in that pecking order, I think we're probably 2nd or 3rd. I think USC or Georgia is number 1 right now. We'll see if we make up that ground. But obviously would love to have him. He'd be a great addition. It's kind of surprising to me. Iowa should be going all in, whatever they could do to keep someone like this in state, just like they should have done for Caden Proctor, even though he showed up and he didn't like it, but still, Nick Brooks should be number 1 for Iowa. They should be doing whatever they can because it's rare to get this type of offensive lineman in your state, especially in Iowa. But it looks like Georgia, USC, or Texas where it'll end up. My money would probably be on USC at this point. But, I mean, it's hard to say no to Georgia, and it's definitely hard to say no to Texas, too, with Kyle Flood. So it'll be interesting. A guy that people are saying maybe we don't want, Kelshawn Johnson. He is the number 8 athlete coming out next year. But he's going to play wide receiver. Everyone has him listed there other than 247. I don't know why they have him listed as an athlete. Everyone says he's going to play wide receiver. Texas A&M wants him at wide receiver. Texas wants him at wide receiver. USC wants him at wide receiver. And I think he ends up at Texas A&M, unfortunately. I think there's multiple factors here at play. Like when you have Jamie French, Khalil Lockett, DeCorian Moore right above you, if 2 out of those 3 guys commit, those are like different level prospects in this guy. Like, even him being the 8th best athlete in the class, there's just different levels to this. And DeCorian Moore and those other 2 guys are up here, and he's in that 2nd level. So I definitely think Texas would take him. There's no doubt in my mind they would take him. Even if all 3 of them committed, they would have him as a 4th guy. They'd make room for him. But I don't think he wants that, and I think he ends up at Texas A&M because of that. But they definitely want him. There was some talk about that. But last Sunday, after his visit from Texas A&M, Sark made a personal call to him and said, hey, we still want you here. Like, we're not playing games. We really do want you. So he came, he liked his visit, but I think he ends up at Texas A&M anyways. And then Andrew Marsh, not much to say here as well. I don't think he ends up at Texas. I think he goes to USC most likely. He's number 10 wide receiver in the class. And again, it's so this helps Texas, but it also hurts Texas because if you end up with 2 out of the 3 of DeCorian Moore, Khalid Lockett, or Jamie French, you did a great job. If you end up with 3 out of 3, outstanding, otherworldly job. But if you only get 1 out of the 3, and for months we've been hearing you're going to get at least 2 out of 3, and then these other guys are being scared off of it, that's where that could hurt. So Andrew Marsh, I don't think he's really in the mix. He is the number 10 wide receiver, but I do think he ends up at USC. Next up, and a very important visitor, a lot of people didn't think he would end up on the Texas campus. Kevin Wynn, defensive tackle from Georgia, 6'4", 320 pounds. He's probably going to end up either at Georgia, Texas, Florida State, or South Carolina. One of his biggest things, and I love hearing stuff like that, just like Smith Aragbo for Texas Tech, big on academics. Kevin Wynn wants to be a culinary chef. That's like his number one thing. He wants to be a chef. If he does have an NFL career, that's what he said he wants to do. So they actually took him around to a couple steakhouses around the Austin area, let him in the kitchen, let him get to know the owners, eat. He had a really good time with that. They do not have a culinary program. I don't think any of these schools, honestly, in the mix do. They do have a nutrition program, which does help, but the connections here, no offense to Athens, Georgia, Tallahassee, or where's South Carolina, the campus located, Mark?
Columbia.
Okay. I don't think any of them have the connections that Austin, Texas does in the cuisine business. So I definitely think that does help Texas here. And he said on the trip, he's like, everyone just assumes I'm going to Georgia because I'm from Georgia. And that's just not true. Like I just because I was born here doesn't mean I have to go here. That's basically what he said. So everyone was kind of surprised that he showed up. He had a good time. And I think Texas is way more in the mix than people thought heading into the weekend. So he's another guy that, listen, if we lose Brandon Brown, but we get this guy, I think we probably upgrade by like 5%. I'd love them both. Like that would be a great win for Texas because, in my opinion, offensive line, linebacker, and defense line are the 3 biggest needs for Texas in this class. Everything else is just icing on top of the cake. And speaking of positions, linebacker, Riley Pettijohn, I think this guy is probably number 1 on the board of most likely to commit. I'd put DeCorian Moore at number 2 on that. He is going to A&M next weekend. It's probably coming down to Texas A&M. I think someone put a crystal ball in a long time ago for USC. I could see USC being the 3rd, but I think they're a far and away 3rd, just like Ohio State is a far and away 2nd for DeCorian Moore. Number 5 linebacker in the country. He's from Texas. And again, it comes down to Texas A&M, and we really need him. This is, like I said, one of the 3 position groups we really need to build depth at. And he's a really, really good player. And I think he ends up at Texas. He's been crystal balled to Texas for a long time. Nothing changed that. If anything, it strengthened where I believe this visit did to Texas. So I think he ends up at Texas, but there's always a chance he could go to A&M. And then another guy I put right behind him, number 3 and most likely to commit, John Mills, 6'6", 320 pounds, the number 38 offensive tackle in the country. He could also play guard with a body like that. He is very big. He is from California, and it comes down to Texas, Washington, and Florida, but has been mentioned multiple times, no matter where you look, he wants to play football in the South. When someone tells you what they want, usually like Kevin Wynn, I want to be a chef, Smith Aragbo, grades, academics matter, listen, and he wants to play football in the South. So that, to me, I don't think Washington is in the South. I don't think he ends up in Washington. I think he ends up at Texas or Florida. I think he's a heavy Texas lean at this point. And again, another big body for Kyle Flood. So I would put him on a guy that could commit pretty soon as well. So we'll look out for John Mills. And then a guy, Mark, this fits in that profile thing again. Small profile, but he is getting recruited by the right teams. I've seen him Utah, Kansas. Guys just like Lance Leipold and Kyle Whittingham know what they're doing. Jonathan Cunningham, linebacker. He's the number 35 linebacker in the country. He has a small profile. TCU is also in the mix. But Texas is number 1. I guess he was absolutely blown away on his visit. And I think, honestly, no offense to those schools, but when you get letters from TCU, Utah, and Kansas, it's cool, no doubt. But when you get that letter from Texas, USC, those schools, that just hits differently. And then when you go on a visit, you realize, wow, this is just a different ball game. I think if Texas wants him and makes room for him because he is a smaller profile guy, I think he ends up at Texas. I think, honestly, he's probably, if you're not getting a Riley Pettijohn or someone like that, Marco Jones, if you miss out on one of your top linebacker guys, this is the guy immediately next in line of like Stark's like, you can commit where we want you. And even then, we still may want him. They really may like what he brings to the table and where he profiles and projects. So we'll see. I think he can end up being a good player. Like I said, if you're getting recruited by Kyle Whittingham and Lance Leipold, I think you're going to be a pretty good player, in my opinion. And then this one's going to be quick. Dalen McCutcheon, the number 23 wide receiver in the country. It's been said, not happening. It's just not happening. When he was asked, what do you think of Texas? He's like, they're in the mix. So it's just not going to happen. He'll end up somewhere else. Most likely, probably Oklahoma or Texas A&M. Like I said, I think this wide receiver battle with Jamie French, Khalil Lockett, and Corey Moore is scaring a lot of people off, and that happens to be Dalen McCutcheon's position. So I don't think he ends up there. And then Lamont Rogers, he had a really good visit. Mark, this is one of the position groups, like I said, we needed offensive tackle. 5 out of the 10 offensive tackles for this year's class are from the state of Texas, he being one of them. The issue here is there's a log jam, or what could be, especially if Michael Fasusi commits at his position, and he really doesn't want to battle it out like that. That's what the main concern I've heard is for him. So I don't think he ends up at Texas. I just don't want him to go to Oklahoma. I'm going to be straight up honest with you, because they already have one guy committed, I believe, Haywood, 5-star, and then this guy would go there. I believe he's a high 4-star, low 5-star. So they'd be doing a really good job on the offensive line. So I'm hoping anywhere but Oklahoma for him, but that could definitely happen for him. And then Treston Castro, the number 24 cornerback in the country, he is committed to USC. He's a low 4-star. I don't know if Texas flips him. He liked his visit. Obviously, Sark has California connections. It is a position where we definitely would love to have him because we do need cornerbacks. But I just think right now, unless he goes on another visit here, I think he still ends up at USC. So there we go. 16 guys I named. 3 of them already committed to Texas. 2 of them hard commits. 1 soft commit in Brandon Brown. And then 13 other guys. So there was your homework for anyone that wants to look up any of those commits.